Matthias, Nina said, stepping forward. He scrambled backwards, nearly landing himself in the water. If she laid hands on him again, he'd lose his mind. Nina halted, the hurt on her face unmistakable. She had no right. Clumsy this one, the bronze girl said impassively. Put him under, Nina, commanded Kaz. Don't, Matthias protested, panic surging through him. You're dumb enough to capsize the boat. Stay away from me, witch, Matthias growled at Nina. Nina gave him a tight nod. With pleasure. She lifted her hands, and Matthias felt his eyelids grow heavy as she dragged him into unconsciousness. Kill you, he mumbled. Sleep well. Her voice was a wolf, dogging his steps. It chased him into the dark. In a windowless room draped in black and crimson, Matthias listened silently to the strange words coming out of the pale, freakish boy's mouth. Matthias knew monsters, and one glance at Kaz Brecker had told him this was a creature who had spent too long in the dark. He'd brought something back with him when he crawled into the light. Matthias could sense it around him. He knew others laughed at fear and superstition, but he trusted his gut. Or he had, until Nina. That had been one of the worst effects on her betrayal. The way he'd been forced to second-guess himself. That doubt had almost been his undoing at Hellgate, where instinct was everything. He'd heard Brecker's name in prison, and the words associated with him. Criminal prodigy, ruthless, amoral. They called him Dirty Hands because there was no sin he would not commit for the right price. And now this demon was talking about breaking into the ice court. About getting Matthias to commit treason. Again, Matthias corrected himself. I'd be committing treason again. He kept his eyes on Brecker. He was keenly aware of Nina watching him from the other side of the room. He could still smell her rose perfume in his nose, and even in his mouth. The sharp flower scent rested against his tongue as if he were tasting it. Tasting her. Matthias had woken bound and tied to a chair in what looked like some kind of gambling parlor. Nina must have brought him out of the stupor she placed him in. She was there along with the bronze girl, Jesper, the long-limbed boy from the boat, sat in a corner with his bony knees drawn up, and a boy with ruddy gold curls doodled aimlessly on a scrap of paper atop a round table made for playing cards, occasionally gnawing at his thumb. The table was covered with a crimson cloth, flocked with a repeating pattern of crows and a wheel similar to the one used at the Hell Show Arena, but with different markings. Different markings had been propped against a black lacquered wall. Matthias had this feeling that someone, probably Nina, had tended to more of his injuries while he was unconscious. The thought made him sick. Better clean pain than Grisha corruption. Then Brecker had started talking about a drug called Yurdaparim, about an impossibly high reward, and about the absurd idea of attempting to raid on the ice court. Matthias wasn't sure what might be a fact or fiction, but it hardly mattered. When Brecker was finally finished, Matthias simply said, no. Believe me when I say this, Halvar. I know getting knocked out and waking up in strange surroundings isn't the friendliest way to start a partnership, but you didn't give us many options, so try to open your mind to the possibilities. You could have come to me on your knees, and my answer would be the same. You do understand that I can have you back at Hellgate in a matter of hours. Once poor Muslim's in the infirmary, the switch will be easy. Do it. I can't wait to tell the warden your ridiculous plans. What makes you think you'll be back with a tongue? Kaz, Nina protested. What do you want? Matthias said. He wouldn't betray his country again. I told you, said Nina. Don't pretend to know me, witch, he snarled. His eyes trained on Brecker. He wouldn't look at her. He refused to. Jesper unfolded himself from the corner. Now that they were out of the Hellgate gloom, Matthias could see that she had deep brown Zemeni skin and courageous gray eyes. He was built like a stork. Without him, there's no job, said Jesper. We can't break into the ice court blind. Matthias wanted to laugh. You can't break into the ice court at all. The ice court wasn't an ordinary building. It was a compound, Fjorda's ancient stronghold. home to an unbroken succession of kings and queens, repository of their greatest treasures and most sacred religious relics. He was impenetrable. Come now, Helvar, said the demon. Surely there's something you want. The cause is righteous enough for a zealot like you. Fjerdan may think they've caught a dragon by the tail, but they won't be able to hold on. Once Boyulbayr replicates his process, Yurdaprem will enter the market, and it's only a matter of time before others learn to manufacture it too. It will never happen. Yulbayr will stand trial, and if he is found guilty, he will be put to death. Guilty of what? Nina asked softly. Crimes against the people. Which people? He could hear the barely leashed anger in her voice. Natural people, Matthias replied. People who live in harmony with the laws of this world instead of twisting them for their own gain. Nina made a kind of exasperated snorting sound. The others just looked amused, smirking at the poor backwards Fjerdan. Brum had warned Matthias that the world was full of liars, pleasure-seekers, faithless heathens. And there seemed to be a concentration of them in this room. You're being short-sighted about this, Helvar, said Brecker. Another team could get to Yulbayr first. The Shu, maybe the Ravkins, all of which with their own agendas. Border disputes, the old rivalries, don't matter to the Kirch. All the Merchant Council cares about is trade, and they want to make sure Yurdaprem remains a rumor, and nothing more. So leading criminals into the heart of Fjerdan to steal a valued prisoner is a patriotic act, Matthias said scornfully. I don't suppose the promise of 4 million Kruger will sway you either. Matthias spat. You can keep your money. Choke on it. Then a thought came to him. Vile, barbaric. But the one thing that might allow him to return to Helgate with peace in his heart, even if he didn't have a tongue in his head. He tilted back as far as his bonds would permit, and focused all his attention on Brecker. I'll make a deal with you. I'm listening. I won't go with you, but I'll give you a plan for the layout of the court. That should at least get you past the first checkpoint. And what will this valuable information cost me? I don't want your money. I'll give you the plans for nothing. It shamed Matthias to say the words, but he spoke them anyway. If you let me kill Nina Zenek. The little bronze girl made a sound of disgust, her contempt firm clear, and the boy at the table stopped doodling, his mouth falling open. Kaz, however, didn't seem surprised. If anything, he looked pleased. Matthias had the uncomfortable sense that the demon had known exactly how this would play out. I can give you something better, said Kaz. What can be better than revenge? There's nothing else I want. I can make you a Druskill again. Are you a magician, then? A wish sprite who grants wishes. I'm superstitious, not stupid. You can be both, you know, but that's hardly the point. Kaz slipped a hand into his dark coat. Here, he said. He gave a piece of paper to the bronze girl. Another demon. This one walked with soft feet like she drifted in from the next world. And no one good had the good sense to send her back. She brought the paper up to his face for him to read. The document was written in Kirch and Fjerdan. He couldn't read Kirch. He'd only picked up the language in prison. But the Fjerdan was clear enough, and his eyes moved over the page. Matthias's heart started to pound. In light of new evidence, Matthias Benedict Helvar is granted full and immediate pardon from all charges of slave trafficking. He is released on this day, with the apologies of the court, and will be provided transport to this homeland or destination of his choosing with all possible haste and sincere apologies of this court and the Kirch government. What new evidence? Kaz leaned back in his chair. It seems Nina Zenek has recanted her statements. She will face charges of perjury. Now he did look at her. He couldn't stop it. He left bruises on her graceful throat. He told himself to be glad of it. Perjury. How long will you serve for that, Zenek? 2 months, she said quietly. 2 months. Now he did laugh, long and hard. His body twitched with it, as if it were poison constricting his muscles. The others watched him with some concern. Just how crazy is he? Asked Jasper, fingers drumming on the pearl handles of his revolvers. Brecker shrugged. He's not what I'd call reliable, but he's all we've got. 2 months. Probably in some cozy prison where she'd charm every guard into bringing her fresh bread and fluffing her pillows. Or maybe she'd just talk to them into letting her pay a fine that her rich Grisha keepers back in Ravka could cover for her. She can't be trusted, you know, he said to Brecker. Whatever secrets you hope to gain from Bo you'll buy her, she'll turn them over to Ravka. Let me worry about that, Halvar. You do your part, and the secrets of Yulbayr and Yurdapuram will be in the hands of people best equipped to make sure they stay rumors. 2 months. Yuna would serve her time and return to Ravka 4 million Kruger richer, never giving him another thought. But if this pardon was real, then he could go home too. Home. He'd imagined breaking out of Hellgate plenty of times, but he never really put his mind to the idea of escape. What life was there for him out on the outside, with the charge of slavery hanging around his neck? He could never return to Firda, even if he could have borne the disgrace. He'd have lived each day as a fugitive from the Kurdish government, a marked man. He knew he could eke out a life for himself in Voizem, but what would have been the point? This was something different. If the demon Brecker spoke the truth, Matthias would get to go home. The longing for it twisted in his chest, to hear his language spoken, to see his friends again, taste Selma filled with great sweet almond paste. Feel the bite of the northern wind as it came roaring over the ice, to return home and be welcomed there, without the burden of dishonor. With his name cleared, he could return to his life as Druskill, and the price would be treason. So what if Bo Yulbayr is dead? He asked Brecker. Van Eck insists he isn't. But how could the merchant Kaz spoke of truly understand fear and ways? If there hadn't been a trial yet, there wouldn't be, and Matthias could easily predict the outcome. His people would never free a man with such terrible knowledge. But what if he is Brecker? You still get your pardon, even if their quarry was already settled ashes on the pyre. Matthias would have his freedom. At what cost, though? He'd made mistakes before. He'd been foolish enough to trust Nina. He'd been weak, and he would carry that shame for the rest of his life. But he'd pay for his stupidity and blood and misery, and the stink of Hellgate. And his crimes had been meager things. The actions of a naive boy. This was so much worse. To reveal the secrets of the Ice Court, to see his homeland once more, only to know that every step he took there was an act of treason. Could he do such a thing? Brum would have laughed in their faces, torn that pardon to pieces, but Kaz Brecker was smart. He clearly had resources. What if Matthias said no, and against all odds, Brecker and his crew still found their way into the Ice Court and stole the shoe scientist? Or what if Brecker was right, and another country got there first? It sounded like Perem was too addictive to be useful to Grisha, but what if the formula fell into Ravkan hands, and they somehow managed to adapt it, to make Ravka's Grisha, its second army, even stronger? If he was part of this mission, Matthias could make sure Bo Yulbayr never took another breath outside the Ice Court's walls, or he could arrange for some kind of accident on the trip back to Kerch. Before Nina, before Hellgate, he never would have considered it. Now he found he could make his bargain with himself. He would join the demon's crew, earn his pardon, and when he was Druskill once more, Nina Zenek would be his first target. He'd hunt her in Kerch, in Ravka, whatever hole or corner of the world she thought would keep her safe. He would run Nina Zenek to ground, and make her pay in every way imaginable. Death would be too good. He'd have thrown her into the most miserable cell in the Ice Court, where she'd never be warm again. He'd toy with her as she toyed with him. He'd offer her salvation and then deny it. He'd gift her with affection and small kindnesses, then snatch them away. He would savor every tear she shed, and replace that sweet green flower scent with the salt of her sorrow on his tongue. Even so, the words were bitter in Matthias's mouth when he said, "I'll do it." Brecker winked at Nina, and Matthias wanted to knock his teeth in. When I've dealt with Nina, Nina, her life's share of misery, I'll comfort you. You'd call it witches. How different could it be to slay a demon? The bronze girl folded up the document and handed it to Brecker, who slipped it in his breast pocket. Matthias felt like he was watching an old friend, one he'd never hoped to see again, vanish into a crowd, and he was powerless to call out.